Okay. All right. So let me share my screen here. First of all, before we get started, before I share my screen, are there any questions on anything from process? Hey, welcome, Charlie. How you doing there? So let's just get started. Is there anybody stuck anywhere with anything we've talked about already? Any of the process of registration, anything right now? The test is not out yet, so don't worry about that. I'll let you know when it comes out. They're having some issues with the website. So the whole state for all sports, fall sports, nothing's out yet. So is there anything you guys are stuck on? Questions? Anything like that? No? Good. Charlie, David, you go good? Okay.
All good. All good.
All right. Well, at any time, jump in. So here's what my plan is. I'd like to walk through a bunch of stuff tonight, random topics. And I got two of these presentations. We'll do one tonight and we'll do one next week. And then we might even we'll see where the test is. Maybe the third week might get the test done. Like this course, as long as you guys are reading the stuff I'm giving you, like I don't have to like literally go over it. It's just some of it's reading. It's more answering questions. Like I will spend some time next week on fouls and penalties and things like that. And offside, a little bit different than USSF, at least the way we cover it. So we'll cover that stuff next week. But tonight I want to cover like uniforms, equipment, game procedure, stuff like that. So for those of you that are not live on the call, you're listening to this recording, make sure you shoot me an email. Let me know you saw this so I know that you're keeping up with the content. Okay. So we'll get started here. I see Joe is joining. So I'll let him come in here. Let me hit the share button here. All right, Joe, do you have any I see you just joined. Do you have any questions? Hey, Joseph.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Anything, you stuck on anything before we get started here tonight?
No, I handled the registration portion and got all the paperwork done online.
Okay. Did everyone on this call, were you guys here last week? Did you get to introduce yourself to everybody? I can't remember who was on last week.
I was not on the call last week.
Well, why don't you say hi to everyone? Introduce yourself to us, where you're from, maybe a little bit about your interests, your background in officiating, anything like that. Anything, just say hi.
Sure. Sorry I'm late. My son had a swim meet. My name is Joe. I coached soccer for 20 years at Oak Crest High School. I was a head boys varsity coach for 15 years. I stopped doing that because my son just started high school and I wanted to watch him play. But he just gave up soccer for swimming because he's really good at swimming. But he had a number of games as a freshman and JV player canceled because there were no refs.
Yeah.
So I thought I've been in the game for over 40 years. So I figured, for freshmen and JV, it's not fair to those kids to have games canceled because there aren't enough officials. So that's why I'm doing this.
Yeah. What was your last year coaching?
2020 COVID year.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I'm sure I've done one of your games. I'm sure somewhere along.
Sure you did. If you did Oak Crest, you did me.
Yeah, we did. I'm sure I did. Well, good. Welcome to the group. We're here and some of the folks listen to the recording. So some of them work at night, whatever, but that's okay. Right. So I'm going to go through some rule mechanic and more game management here, like stuff like these are like random topics we'll go through. But, for those of you that are experienced and have a good background with USSF and have been worked for Rich Papperman, this will be good because we'll be able to point out the differences here of what's going on with high school. So anytime, jump in with questions, right? This is super casual. Should take about an hour. I got one more of these we'll do next week, go through the rest, and then we'll do the test. And that's kind of it. We'll get on the field. We try to make this like not painful to do this, especially for many of you that have a lot of experience, whether it's coaching or refereeing. There will be some folks that join us that don't have a lot of experience, and we'll spend more, if you're new to this, you're listening to this and it's kind of new to you, like, don't worry, we'll spend extra time with you. Okay, let's dig in. First thing, uniform. So my recommendation to you is like you're in, right? You've registered, order the uniform because sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get in. Sometimes they're out of stock. We are required, there's only one shirt, unlike USSF. I know you have different colors and I did that a few years ago. I just don't do it anymore, but I still have all the colored shirts, but we only have one shirt. It's this fluorescent green and it has the NJSIAA logo on it. And you can order it through that allsportsofficials.com. Dennis is the owner, but you can order online. You can call them. If you go to the website, their number's there. If you want to talk to them, you know, ask questions or whatever. The two things that are required are the shirt and the socks. Now, I know if you've worked USSF or Rich, you have the socks that have the whatever the logo is kind of down in the middle, like the middle stripe. High school wears the three white stripes up top. Now, look, I'll be honest with you. I've worked with guys that wear those other socks. I scratch my head a little bit because, I mean, you can certainly buy a pair of socks. They're not that expensive, $6 or whatever they are, you know? So my recommendation is get the right socks. You have to have the shirt. You have to have at least the short sleeve shirt because it gets hot, you know, early in the year, but there is a long sleeve version of it. And I can tell you the shirts, they're better this year. They're Smitty shirts. They used to be something else. I forget what they were before. All the other stuff is optional, but you do need it, meaning not optional that you need it. It's optional in the style, right? You obviously need caution, cards. You need a timing device, a watch. I mean, I love my
Screenshot that.
I love my Apple Watch, you know, so I just use that, you know, so works out great. Whistles for those of
I
you.
do this. This is my thing. Let me know.
Wait, who's on? Somebody's got to go on mute there. Is that Tyrone?
Yes.
All right. You're welcome to the group. Are you listening in here? We're just getting
Yes.
started. Okay. All right. We're just getting started. So let me just mute you there. Okay, perfect. So if you guys have any questions, just come off mute. As I was saying about the uniform, that's where you order it. Just if you're new to the game, don't forget, we don't wear whistles around our neck. We hold them. So you can either get the ring style. I prefer that style. Some people just get a whistle with the lanyard and wrap it around their hand. Some people just carry it. Doesn't matter. You can also, you need to write on something, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But so you need to have a pen or something to write on. Any black shorts will do. So, you know, even when sometimes it gets cold down at the shore, sometimes we even wear the long sweats if it's like super cold, and we'll put on the black jacket, you know, but you know, 90% of the time it's this outfit right here. So any questions on uniforms? My suggestion to you is order it sooner than later. If you wait till the week before the season starts, they might not have it for you. And it does take, you know, a few days. It comes out of Newtown, Pennsylvania. So if you're actually up in that area, there's a place there. There might be some other places you can order from, but this is the preferred supplier for the NJSIA, which has all the stuff that you need. Okay. I think the shirts are like $50. Now, remember, the state has a program. If you go through the program, pass all the stuff, do everything properly, work the season. Last year was a $300 stipend for new officials, which is pretty good. So you get a lot of this back, you know, and it kind of pays for at least your startup fees to get into, you know, a little bit of your dues and this and that. Right. So, and, you know, if you talk to Dennis, mention my name, tell him you're in the cadet program in South Jersey, because you don't want them by accident sending you a Pennsylvania outfit or whatever, right? You want to make sure you mention you're a high school soccer official in Cape May, Atlantic County, or down here in the South, and they'll set you up.
Do they have
That's you-
kits? Do they
Yeah.
have like everything in this picture? Do they have other than the watch perhaps? Do they have like a kit where you can just buy all that? Or you have to buy it all separately kind of thing?
Yeah, they'll set you up, and they might even give you a discount or whatever. You know, you just, I mean, certainly you could go on Amazon and buy most of this stuff. You just can't buy, you actually can buy the socks on Amazon. The shirt is only through certain providers. I know All Sports Officials is one. They're the ones that I prefer because he's
That's
really
fine.
good. Yeah.
Okay.
But you could buy all the other stuff anywhere you want, really.
Got
So
about the pin?
I have a question. If I have everything else from USSSF, and can I just buy the shirt and wear everything else, or I have to buy
No, you
shorts
can.
and
You can wear your USSF shorts. I wear mine. It has the US little, what you guys know, whatever that logo is at the bottom there.
yeah, and the socks as well? They're good?
Socks, you need these 3-stripe socks. I would recommend you don't stand out. I'm going to tell you that you'll go to a game once and you'll see some of Rich Papperman's people will wear the striped socks with the middle stripe. I don't like it. I would not. You will not get a good, if you're seen by someone that's giving you a rating, because you will be rated as a cadet, a score. That won't fare well for you. So just, spend this.
Any specific colors or just
There's
bright
only
yellow?
one color. There's only one.
color?
Yeah. It's just, it's hard to tell in this picture, but it's a fluorescent green. It's like literally like a traffic cop green. It's like super bright fluorescent green. One color, everybody wears the same shirt because there are no high school teams that wear that color. So now some goalkeepers might have it, but that's okay. And the socks are just black socks, right? Black shoes. I don't have shoes on here, but you can wear any shoes you want. They have to be black. Don't wear white, right? You could, and they can have stripes or whatever, right? But just wear black sneakers or black turf shoes or what, black soccer cleats, whatever you prefer. Okay.
Question. I have another question. What is this pin? Is that a pin on the right? I don't know what this is.
Where
The soccer ball. Go.
that's just a coin. You need a coin. Yeah.
Coin.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need something with the heads and tails, right? That's all. Quarter, whatever, penny, doesn't matter. Yeah. Take a quarter with you, a couple quarters. I have old poker chips. I put H and T on, so they're a little heavier, so I don't lose them.
Another question.
Yeah.
Before you go back. Okay. Say on a cold day, do you allow wearing undergarment with a long
Yes.
sleeve?
Yep. So you can buy the long sleeve shirt. Or you can, like, if it's super cold, like we always say, like, let's not torture ourselves. If you both wear a black jacket over this, you can, but most people will just put Under Armour underneath, like black,
Black Under Armour.
Yeah, black and if you have the long sleeve, it really doesn't matter, right?
Right, but I'm looking at certainly watching my budget, if you will. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of black Under Armour long sleeve. So
Yep.
on a cold day, instead of buying a jacket at this point, as
Yep.
I'm starting,
That's what I do. Yep. Just put anything you want underneath of it,
Fair
just to stay warm. That way they can see when you're running around. This color stands out. You can tell. It's hard to tell from this picture, but it does.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep. So my recommendation is order sooner than later so that you don't get to a situation. We've had years where supply chain, they're out of stock, and because, everybody's ordering at the same time. So, okay. Uniform. Before the game, let's talk about before the game. One thing is by contract, and this is different than if you're used to working weekend ball and things like that. It is our contract with the League of Leagues, which is the oversight that pays us, is we have to contact the school and our partner the day of the game, no later than noontime of game. So that can be one of a couple ways. You can email the athletic director, and when you're in the system, you'll get all the contact information of who the athletic director is, etc. So you typically, and don't do it so far in advance, because you want to know if the game's on that day. So we say the morning of. Now, look, some people do it the night before, not a big deal. If you know the weather's going to be good, night before is not, but I wouldn't do it like a week in advance. ADs don't even know what's happening tomorrow, let alone a week in advance. So you contact the AD, it's super important that you contact the other official. And most of the time you're going to be working 2-person crews, work and contact that partner, because there's no excuse if your partner doesn't show up because they missed the game, because someone should be contacting, you should be contacting each other. And if you show up for a game and it's canceled and you didn't call the school, you will not get paid. If you call the school and they say, yeah, we're on for today, you, whether it's email or you get someone's name that you talk to, the secretary, and for some reason you get there and they cancel, you'll get paid. So that's the key. If you just like happen to get in your car and go, never communicated, you're on your own. And that's by our contract. We're supposed to do that.
I have a question. I do baseball, so, you know, it's very similar to the baseball situation. But let's say somebody has a last minute problem and can't make the game, and you can't, I guess, reschedule anybody that quickly, whoever the scheduler is. So I'm the only one at the game. Do I do the game by myself, or how does that work?
Yeah. So the protocol is, first thing you do is, if you're at the game by yourself, you will have Joe Harrison's number on your phone. Everyone will have that, and you'll have the app on your phone, which you'll be able to, you know, call Joe. Obviously you're calling your partner to find out what's going on, but
Right.
yes, you would start the game.
Yes,
Yeah.
trouble. Can't get there.
Yeah, that's right. You would start the game. Soccer, right? It's easy. Just run
Yeah.
the middle. And then if your partner shows up, they jump in. If they don't, you do the game, you get paid extra. So yeah. So just try to get the game in. The athletic director will be there. You always talk to them as well. So
Right.
one of the things we'll mention is this pregame discussion. I'm going to show you something here in a second. We have a pregame discussion template that I will share with you after this call. But prior to the start of the game, the person that is responsible for starting the game is the host institution. So they're the ones that say, go, no go. So it's, you don't walk up to the game and you say, hey, we're not playing because it's slippery out there, or it's raining, or whatever, right? If the host institution says you go, you at least go, you go through the process of starting the game. Now you could blow the whistle to start the game and then 30 seconds later stop it, because it's the referee's decision once you start the game, similar to other sports. So, but my point is that you go through that process and you want to arrive about 30 minutes prior. Now, look, we get it at 3:30 start. It's sometimes hard to get there. You want to get there as close as you can, because you want to give a little bit of time for pregame. And you talk to your partner and say, like, hey, when are you showing up? Where are you showing up? Because especially if you're new to high school, like, where do you meet? If I'm going to Ocean City, there's lots of places to park. If I'm going to the prep, like, you could park over by the stadium. You could park over by the JV field. Like, where are you parking? Like, just talk through that. And most likely you'll be working with someone that's been there, hopefully. Okay. I won't get too much into the field, but I will tell you that part of our pregame is when we come to the field, just like anything else, we do a quick walk. Usually we split up as we come from our cars. One official will go down, check the corner flags, check the goal, make sure that it's on the line properly. We don't usually walk all the distances off. Like, if you had time and you want to, if something looks super funky, like the penalty mark is like super out of the spot, like, you could do that. But like, we don't like typically go through and walk everything, right? But you want to make sure the corner flags and the goal is safe. You want to make sure that the goals are anchored down, right? Because that is a rule. They have to have sandbags or be permanently anchored to the ground. So let me jump out of that. I want to show you something I'm going to share with you after. This document, I'll send you a PDF document. This is a pregame conference card that I developed years ago, and we use with all of our, it's 2 pages. My suggestion is you print it and laminate it or stick it in one of those plastic protectors, right? And I have it in my car. If you work with me, the first thing we do when we get out of our car, we get dressed and say, let's have a 5-minute pregame. And we'll walk through this stuff. We'll walk through the rule changes. I'll make this bigger so you guys can see here. So we'll walk through the rule changes, which, by the way, the rule changes, I'm not going to go through so much in detail because Rich Papperman, who our interpreter, will in the rule interpretations meeting, which is a requirement that all officials go through. And that'll be coming up in a few weeks. You'll get detail. I think I might have sent you some of the dates on that, but you'll get details on how to join that. And all this stuff, right? This is what, well, I'll talk, if you and I were working together, I would talk through all these things, super brief, right? One thing is we want to identify the site administrator for all games, okay? And who that, do we have all these things in place? We'll talk a little bit later about lineups. I won't go through this in detail because one of our sessions, as we get closer to on-field mechanics, we'll actually do a pregame together. We'll go through the pregame. And one thing I do want to point out, we play 2 40-minute periods, and varsity only is, do we play sudden victory overtime? Okay. The mercy rule is for the Cape Atlantic. I was just putting this in Cape Atlantic League only. And it's +5 goals. If a team is up by 5 goals in the second half equals clock runs. So in the Cape Atlantic League, if there's 2 Cape Atlantic teams playing and one team is up by 5 goals, when we start the second half, the coaches typically would come to you and say, we're going to run the clock. If they don't, we don't run the clock. That's up to them. They might say like, no, it's not for us to decide. That's a league rule. Okay. So, but I'll go into all that stuff later. I actually have some slides on that when we get there. So let me just, okay. So this card talks about like field coverages. So one of the things I would talk about with you, especially if we've never worked together, it's kind of like a pilot getting on an airplane. Let's talk about like, hey, what happens? What are we doing? Who's covering what? Who's got the controls during this time? Talk about kickoffs. The referee, the R2, R1 is in the assigning system as R1 is typically the lead official. Usually has more experience, but not necessarily all the time. R2, we'll talk about that later. We're not talking about field mechanics today. But you would see, I would talk about that crew, how we would communicate as a crew, who's taking all the restarts, free kicks, goal kicks, corner kicks, throw-ins, penalty kicks, substitutions, and what are we doing after the game? So like in 5 minutes, I have this in my hand and I walk through these things. My recommendation is that not to be shy as a new official, especially if you're working with experienced officials. Some people don't do this, just like anything. There's best practices and not so best practices. I can tell you that being an official for 45 years, every game I go into, whether it's soccer, basketball, or I do college softball, I have an extensive pregame conversation with my partner. It might only be 5 minutes. If it's a basketball game, it might be 10 or 15 minutes. I might pull out in my car, I actually have a soccer little clip chart. I, move the magnets around. And so I'll pull that out too. My suggestion to you as a new official is say to someone, hey, I'm new. We've never worked together before. Would you mind if I led a quick pregame conversation so we're just on the same page? There's not one person in this organization will say like, heck no, we don't have time for that. Now, if you don't have time for it, that's one thing. If you're running late, but if you got time and you're in the parking lot or in the locker room, just most of the time, 90% of the time, you'll be in a parking lot. They'll probably say, yeah, sure, that sounds cool. You pull this out, and in 5 minutes, you can walk through these, whatever ones you want to highlight, you can talk through, especially like who's going to handle restarts, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, we'll cover this later, but I wanted to bring that out when we were talking about pregame discussion. The pregame discussion happens in the pregame. That's with officials. There is a different discussion that happens on the field. Cover that in a moment, but that's between the referee and the R1 and R2, or possibly the referee and the assistant referees if you're doing a 3-person game. And I know if you work a lot for like USSF, you probably don't have a lot of time to do pregame conferences. You work so many games, you're used to working with one another. But here it's most likely you're going to work with people you've never seen before, never worked before, and you don't know what their skill level is either. Okay. We'll get into all this stuff later, but we're good to go. Okay. One thing is about the ball for high school is that obviously you need 3 of them, and all schools will have at least 3. Some have more. It has to have the NFHS logo on it, somewhere on it. So that's one thing you do check besides checking to make sure they're kind of inflated properly, right? And most teams will provide 2 ball runners, you know, 1 for each side, and you should ask them for that, and they'll do that. So that speeds up the game. So 2 ball holders, and you need 3 balls. Now, if they don't have Federation balls, yes, you can grab them from the visiting team. If neither team has Federation logoed balls, you still play the game, use the home team's balls or whatever one's better, and you report that back to the chapter secretary, who is Joe Rossi, right? So we need to know that if they're not equipped properly, but always we play the game. Always, always. If they came out with square balls, you play the game and report it later. Okay. Obviously, I'm kidding. Okay.
I have a quick question about the balls.
Yeah.
Is it okay to just feel? Or
Yeah.
do you want to
Yeah.
pressure
No.
gauge?
Just feel. Just yeah. If it's
Feel,
like
okay.
too soft, too hard, like just we're not going crazy on this stuff.
Yeah, the only reason I asked is we had a couple of officials who would like use a pressure gauge, and the balls ended up hard as a rock. Kids getting hurt. So
Yep.
I'd rather go by feel than pressure gauge.
I do too. I don't think any of I don't know who those people were. They're probably, who knows? Okay. Uniforms, right? This is important. We do need to know a little bit about uniforms, and I'll send you this document after, which shows this. And I don't want to actually go through too much detail, but I will say a couple things, right? All the jerseys have to have numbers, right? At least 4-inch number on the front, 6-inch number on the back, unless they have the front number could be on the shorts. Goalkeepers have to have the jersey number on there as well. The visiting team wears white always. I've been to games where the visiting team will come with a dark uniform because it's a different color. And if you don't catch it, they'll try to play with that because maybe it's their favorite thing. But remember, if that's their only uniform, you're still going to play the game and you're going to report it. That's all. We don't stop. We don't, not play a contest because of something like that, because it's not dangerous. It's just a rule, right? And you'll see all the guidelines. Socks, dark color. Socks have to be a dark color. Doesn't have to match the jersey color, but both socks have to be the same color. Visiting team, they only get one color choice. It's white because their uniforms are white. They have to match white, and tape has to be the same color. Shorts can be of a color that's not the same as the jersey. Okay. And you can see all this stuff. Shin guards have to be appropriate. I have some other slides on this, but we'll talk about this later. One thing about head coverings, right? Goalkeepers may wear a soft baseball cap. That's not a problem. Soft padded headgear, permissible. And we'll talk about religious head coverings. I'll tell you one thing. If you're not sure of something, just play the game. If someone comes up to you and says they're wearing this thing because it's religious or whatever, you play the game, write it down, and unless it's dangerous, if it's dangerous, like literally is going to hurt somebody, you play the game. Okay. So on the test, you'll see manufacturer's logo 2.25. That's the magic number for all manufacturers' logos. Can have one logo. It can't exceed 2.25 in any direction. That is definitely a test question. At least it always used to be. So, okay. So they're uniforms. I won't go into that because you can read about those. They're in the book. Read about them, just understand it. And if you have any questions, let me know. One thing we do see a lot of, goalkeepers come out without numbers and they're not supposed to play. But what do you do if they come out without a number and they don't have a number? Play the game, you report it. Okay. Something different than some of USSF officials will know that we have this thing
Billy,
called
I have a
team.
question. I have a question.
Okay.
If you determine that, let's say the team shows up and they didn't wear white and their uniform is very similar to the home team's uniform. Do you have a situation, or even a goalie of the away team has a jersey that's very similar to the home team's jersey in color? Would you request them to wear a penny? Have you done that before? Is that the way it works, or what would you do in that situation?
Just play it, like literally play it.
But even if the colors are similar, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, these are kids, and here's the state's opinion of this. Things are going to happen like that. I mean, unless they're trying to do something like super shady, especially at the lower, where you guys will be working to start, probably be some of the, JV freshmen, whatever. Most varsity contests, we don't have any of those issues, but you might get to a school, a middle school that has, weirdo. Both teams might be the same color. Who knows? I can tell you when you work, the only thing we're regulated by National Federation rules are high school games, not middle school, not travel league, not anything else. So they can do whatever the heck they want. But
you wouldn't request them.
Nope.
Nope.
That's not in the rules. There is no provision for you to request them to wear a penny. Just
okay.
You can request them to change their uniform. And if they say, I don't have the uniform,
They
may wear a penny if you want them, like if you suggest that, but you can't.
For my benefit. I mean, if I'm, it's not, I don't really I care, but I don't care. It's for not for their benefit. It's for my benefit. So I can, I can determine which team did what, and without having to second guess myself saying, well, that's the navy blue team, not the slate blue team,
I hear you. But the answer to your question is play the game. That's it. We can't mandate them to wear anything.
But I can request them to wear the penny.
What's that?
Because I'm looking at these two uniforms and say, I'm going to ask you to wear the penny. You don't have to, but I'm going to request it. Can I do that?
Yeah, you could do anything like that, but you can't stop the game and say, well, we're not playing because you guys have the same things, right? The coach might say, like, we don't have pennies. Yeah. So,
okay,
yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You got it. Okay. Now, this is a little bit different. I know, like with travel ball and stuff, you get the cards, you check the kids' cards, this and that. We don't have any of that. What we have is a requirement at every level in high school. Again, not middle school, but high school, 9th through 12th grade. They are required to present to you 5 minutes prior to the game, a form. Now, it might look like this because this is the NJSIA form, but it doesn't have to look like this. They just need to give you something. It could be written in crayon, as long as it has their number, their name, and the coach's name, and it's like has the school, whatever, has this information, then they are good to go. They will hand it to you on a piece of paper. Usually the scorekeeper will have it. Okay. They can add names to this roster at any time. And typically you'll get 2 pieces of paper, and usually one official will carry one carries the other. Usually we write on it, like you can use it to write goals and cautions and things like that. But you just stick it in your pocket, because if there's a problem, now you have their roster. But if someone's not on the roster, the coach will say, oh, I forgot to put Joey on. Or Mary needs to be added. She came up from the JV game and she's done early. We'd like to get her in. It's the end of the game here. Anytime they can be added. There's no issues, but they got to have the player numbers on here. Okay. So you'll get that piece of paper 5 minutes prior to the game. Here is one. Do not start the game unless you have this in your hand. Now, I will be honest with you. Sometimes I have started a game and forgot, like grab from one and the other one's like, hey, we'll get it in a few minutes. We forget. You can grab it once you started, but get this roster, stick it in your pocket. And so you'll have one from each team. Okay. Substitutions. So we're talking about just general things here. unlike what you see on television and maybe any other leagues maybe you're working, when the clock is stopped, so that's at the end of a period, which is the first half, second half, team scores a goal. We have a goal kick, goes over the end line there, the goal line. And the clock is stopped. Notice says clock is stopped for a caution, yellow card. For those of you who work in USSF, that's a big difference for high school, is that when you caution someone, okay, you stop the clock. The game stops, right? So and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but also the player has to leave the game. So therefore, if a player leaves the game on a caution, yellow card, they can be substituted for immediately from the bench because the clock is stopped. And if the other team wants to substitute that time and they're already at the table, yes, they can. Okay. If there's an injury and the player must go out, yes, they can be substituted for immediately. Unlike other rules or things you see on TV, Major League Soccer, where they stand on the sideline, wait to get waved back in. No, the player comes out injured, they can be substituted immediately right off the bench. Obviously, if you're going to disqualify a player with a red card for some type of offense that is, a send-off, then they're obviously not going to substitute for that. Okay. Blood on a player uniform. Whenever you see blood, we stop the game, substitute for that player. Now, they don't have to substitute. They can play short and substitute. Once they decide to play short, then they can't substitute until the next opportunity to substitute. So once the clock stops and once the clock starts again, then they have to substitute. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. So a little bit different than USSF because we do stop the clock on all these things. Okay. Now, and by the way, so that's either team can substitute. Either team is also when a bench player is carded and subs have reported, all subs must be back on the field. I don't even know why that's like that, but so here's the thing. When you beckon a player on, if there's other substitutes over there, we'll see in a second. If one team is eligible to substitute and other players are waiting, they can come in as well. Improper equipment. So let's say their shin guard falls off, okay? Or their shoe falls off. That basically they're improperly equipped. They may be sub for. We typically don't stop play, but if we have a situation where we have to stop it and they can re-enter at the next dead ball, okay? Now, that's with either team. I do want to say something about concussions. When you have, and you've taken the concussion course, or you are taking the concussion course, you're learning that anytime as an adult, any adult that's at any high school game that observes a student athlete where they exhibit signs or symptoms that are consistent with a concussion, they are to be immediately removed from the game. If you when you take the course, you'll see the things that we're looking for. They're dizzy, disoriented, they possibly lose consciousness, right? It says in the rule book, they can return with permission from a healthcare provider. That is not the case in the state of New Jersey. State of New Jersey has more stringent regulations. They may not return at all to any athletic contest that day. In fact, they go into the NJSA concussion protocol and they can't return for, I think it's like a week or so. So don't let a coach say, well, Dr. Smith just looked at Mary and she's fine. As if the athletic trainer or you have determined, and we'll talk about that later, how you actually go through that concussion process. So, but don't forget, everyone's required to take that little 20-minute course on concussions in sport. And that's at NFHS Learn. Okay.
Question on that. So I guess you'll go into it more, but real quick. All right. So the heads collide, they both go down. Kid stands up. He looks a little dazed, but he's shaking his head like, okay, I'm shaking out the cobwebs kind of thing. What are we, and then he says, what do
Did
we
you,
say?
let me ask you a question. Did you take the
Sure.
course yet?
I did. I've taken it like 4 times. For
Okay,
baseball.
so I'm going to ask you a very specific question.
Okay.
Did the student athlete exhibit signs or symptoms that are consistent with a head injury? Yes or no?
Okay, well, he
No,
can.
don't use the word spacey. I'm going to ask you because you're going to be asked a very specific question, and you have to use those words. Coach number 12 has exhibited signs that
Yeah.
are consistent with a head injury.
That's good.
That's
All
all you
right.
have to say. If you're not sure, don't say anything. If you're sure, if you've observed that, you have, by law, you have to say that.
But
If
you
you've
just-
observed that.
Agreed. But
Yep.
you just gave me an out. It says, if I'm not sure.
If you're not sure, if you haven't observed it. But look, if you're the first one on the scene, the kid gets up and says, "Where am I?" And like his eyes are crisscross and he like almost falls over.
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So you've
don't-
observed something that's consistent with a head injury. And guess what? All of our schools pretty much have athletic trainers. They are just not going to put that player back in anyway. So,
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm with you. That
Yep.
makes sense.
yeah, it's how you remember, we're professionals now. We get paid for
Black and
this.
white. Yeah, that's
We
what I was
have to-
looking for.
Yeah, we have to use the right words here. The words are all critical. Signs or symptoms that are consistent with a head injury or a concussion. That's
Got it.
what we want to use. Yep.
Take it.
Yep. Okay. Substitutions. Now, the other thing, so basically with concussions, there is no substitute. They substitute, but that player can't come back. That's what I was trying to say. Substitutions, team in possession, throw-ins, corner kicks. Okay. That only that team. So if the white team has a throw-in, only the white team can substitute. And those players must have already been reported. Okay. Now, if the white team, and that's the same on a corner kick here, blue is taking a corner kick, only blue can substitute. However, if blue is ready to substitute and white is also at the scores table, then they both can come in. But if blue is doing a corner and white is there, they can't come in. If white is doing a throw in and blue is there, they can't come in unless the team that has possession is requesting to make a substitution. So that's how high school works. I think it's the same in USSF, maybe a little different. Okay. Player versus bench personnel. So it's an interesting distinction. A player, you become a player when you're beckoned onto the field by the referee. Beckon signal is the hand goes like this. You beckon them, come on in. You say, come on in, right? So once you say, come on in, they're at the table, at the halfway line, ready to come in. Then they have to come in. So someone has to go off. You can't wave them in and the coach or the player say, no, I've changed my mind, and nothing happens. That player has to come in and someone has to go off. Now, technically, what would happen is that player that just went off can't just turn around and say like, well, I want to come back in. They have to wait to the next opportunity to substitute because they weren't at the table ready to report when they were allowed to substitute. So you get my idea, right? The idea is that coaches don't send people up to the halfway line just to stop the game and say, like, just kidding, right? So if they change their mind, once they've beckoned onto the field by the near, it's the person near to the table, that sub must enter and someone must come off. Okay. Again, I'm just reviewing this at a high level. This is in your book. You're going to read about it. There's situations in there. You're going to read about all these. I don't want to go into too much detail because you can read it. I don't need to read it for you. Okay. If they want to change a goalkeeper, right? Anytime the clock is stopped or a substitution is permitted after notifying the referee. And look, if you see it happening, you should like be proactive and say, hey, are you changing goalkeepers, right? Because you see them running out there changing shirts. Sometimes they just forget to tell you. And they can change with a field player, obviously with a uniform change. You're supposed to verbally warn them if they don't do that, but look, do a little preventive officiating, just say like, hey, are you changing keepers here? Let me know, right? And I think most coaches know that because you need to know someone else is going to be in there handling the ball. Special equipment. This is really key here, right? So if there's hard casts or splints, they have to be padded, and the padding has to be pretty thick, 1/2 inch, it has to be like not like foam that's like you could just push right through. It has to be like pretty substantial foam. Basically, if you determine it's dangerous, you don't let them play with it. Dangerous is the word. Face masks, they have to have a medical release at the game. And most coaches and athletic trainers know that. There'll be a note if it's some type of molded to the face. Braces, you can see, non-metal can be worn outside. Metal braces must be worn inside. Headbands are allowed. Here's one that happens all the time. You'll see this. Captain armbands. They must be worn on the arm because they're called armbands. Some schools try to wear them on the around the ankles or legs. No go. Have them change it. Now, guess what? And heart monitors, hearing aids, head coverings are allowed. Up top, you see pictures. This is a very sensitive subject. No time as officials will we ask a player to remove something that has something with religious connotation to it. So it could be a hairstyle, beads, whatever it is. The only time we not tell them to remove it. In fact, we never have conversation. This is a critical thing. So listen here. We never have a conversation with a student athlete about the legality of anything they're wearing or their hair or uniform. You never go up to number 12 and say, hey, 12, those beads you have in your head, they're not legal. Or number 12, your shin guards are not legal. Never, ever do we speak to the student athlete. You always address uniform issues or any legality of anything with the head coach. You go to the head coach, say, hey, coach, number 12 is non-compliant with the rule where she has dangerous beads in her hair. And the way we determine that is that if things move, if you shake your head and they move, that would be illegal or non-compliant. If they stay still, if the head moves and the beads stay still, they're compliant. Because it's considered jewelry if it's not compliant.
Well, what does that mean? So are they going to?
They cannot participate. You cannot say as an official, they need to remove. You would never say, first of all, you never say to the athlete, you would never say to the head coach, she needs to remove those beads. That would be the biggest no-no you could say. All you need to say is, coach, by rule, number 12 is wearing jewelry that's non-compliant to the rule. She will not be permitted to enter the game. That's all. They determine what to do. She can make it compliant by rolling it up like in picture B. If she wants to do that. You don't tell her what to do. You just state the fact that number 12 is non-compliant, coach, and it's on them. The coach might say, well, how can she be compliant? Well, when she moves her head, they can't move. Coach, she has earrings in. She needs, to be compliant, she needs to take them out. Coach, she has shin guards that are too small for her size, for her age and her height. She needs to put compliant ones on. That's all you have that conversation with the coach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine. That's not an issue. I
Yeah.
want to talk to the player, trust me. But say non-compliant. The penalty is they can't participate. That's where I was going.
That's right. They cannot. That's correct. Yep. They just can't come in the game. Yep.
Got it.
Okay. So uniform numbers, we talked about that. 6 inches on the back, including the keeper, 4 inches on the front or on the shorts at a minimum. Okay. And I think most schools have this down pretty good. You get to some lower level stuff, maybe not. So again, we always play and we report, play and report. You can ask the coach, say, coach, the keeper's supposed to have a number on their jersey, front and back. The coach said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Okay. You could put a piece of tape on there and make it a number 11 or whatever, and I'm fine with that. Or you change your jersey, or if they don't have a way, so I'm going to play that, but I need to put that report in to our local association. Just play the game, right? Okay. Undergarments, not a big deal. If they have to be solids. They can't be like camo or multicolor, rainbow, this, that, right? They must be solid color for the team and similar length for the individual, meaning can't have one high, one low. So they kind of got to be like fairly similar. Again, we're not measuring tapes out, but can be different than the uniform color. But socks must be of a similar dominant color, right? And we said for white uniforms, the socks are white. And for dark uniforms, they have to be dark, contrasting. The definition of dark is contrasting to white. So if they look like they're white, like if they're gray and they're like, look like white, you say like they're not compliant. If you tape over socks, it has to be the same color, similar color to the sock. We let them get away with dark tape over dark socks and white tape over white socks. Like, because what are the chances you find that purple sock tape? Like, probably not. So if they put black tape over it, kind of let that go. But you don't want to have black tape over white socks. Okay. So they're your visible stuff. Jerseys, home team wears the dark socks and dark jersey. There you see the captain's armband in the right spot. Visitors wear the white jersey, solid white shirt. Notice the girl in white there, both of them actually, untucked is fine. We don't ask people to tuck their shirts in. Back in the day we used to, but not anymore. We don't do that. So however they wear them, as long as it's safe, right? We talked about socks at length there. So the key thing about socks is that they have to differ from the other players, right? So I think we covered this already. This might be a duplicate slide, right? So home team required to wear the dark colored jersey and dark socks. So we don't have to go into this. I think this is actually, when we talk about a goalkeeper, this probably should say goalkeeper must differ from all other players. But the jersey can be the same color as the opponent's goalkeeper. So that's what that first bullet should say. So basically the socks of the goalkeeper should be different than everybody else. They can wear anything they want. So if they're the visiting team, the visiting goalkeeper can't wear white socks. They have to wear something different. But they can be the same color and the same color jersey as the home goalkeeper, right? Again, play the game. If there's a question, and just report it. Jewelry is a no-no, okay? Not permitted at all unless it's medical or religious. If it is, it must be taped under the uniform, not just worn under the uniform, taped down under the uniform. That's one category. Notice these earrings that are taped, no go. So that's because it's not medical or religious and it can't be under the uniform. So anything religious can't be worn externally. The medical alert bracelets can be exposed, but must be taped, but they can be visible. So you don't have to hide them under the uniform, but yes, they need to put a little piece of tape over like a diabetic or whatever heart condition thing. They can wear colored mouth protectors. And we talked about tape over jewelry, right? Cannot just tape over anything that's considered jewelry. And things in the hair that flop around that look like jewelry that are not religious. Again, we start to get into this real shady area. Someone might come up to you and say like, yeah, that little charm in my hair is religious. Write it down. And as long as you don't think it's too dangerous, let them play and report it. and we'll deal with it. You don't have to deal with it. The last thing you want to do is be on, the evening news, and you're the one that caused a big stir because of some religious thing, right? Shin guards, they should have the NOXI seal on them. Now, we do not go around and check them, nor do we check cleats unless you think something is awry. But on the shin guards, what we do notice is if someone's wearing like super tiny little shin guards, then you have a right to question and take a look at them. You can say, look, they look kind of small for you. You're 6'2". They look like for a 12-year-old. You can have them come up because they should have the height range of the player should be stamped on the outside. If not, they're improperly dressed and they can't come in. They're ill-equipped to come into the game. But don't go looking for that. If you see it, then you can take you can dig into that a little bit further. Game length in New Jersey, okay? We play 2 40-minute periods, and we already said that the clock stops on certain things, right? There's a 10-minute halftime break. We only do overtime for varsity, and it's sudden victory, meaning if it happens in the first minute, the game's over. And games can end in a tie. So anything sub-varsity, JV, freshman, anything else, is going to be different, meaning like it's over when it's over. If you're doing middle school, a lot of times middle school is one-person games, and they'll play like 3 periods, like 2 25 minutes and then a 10-minute. Like, you just have to ask them what it is, just like anything else. Just ask them. If you're fortunate enough to eventually get into the NJSIAA playoffs, there's a whole protocol for ending the game because you need a winner. So we go kicks from the mark, and that's a whole different thing. Notice at the bottom, the Cape Atlantic League. By the way, that's only when 2 Cape Atlantic League schools are playing one another. If there's a 5-goal differential starting the second half, or at any time in the second, doesn't have to be starting, but at any time in the second half, there's a 5-goal differential, the clock runs the whole time for any stoppage. So goals, injuries, everything, clock just runs. So, and the interesting thing about that mercy rule is that we don't invoke that. The coaches invoke that. So, it's kind of an odd thing. Like, most coaches know if they don't have a good team and they're getting beat by 5 goals, they're going to want the clock to run anyway. So you typically don't have to ask. We usually don't go up and ask. Coach will come up to you and say like, hey, I talked to the visiting coach here. They're up by 6, keep the clock running. So they might come to you and they might be up by 4. They might say, we'd like the clock to run. At any time in the second half, by mutual agreement by both coaches, you can let the clock run. Or they could say, hey, for the second half, we're only going to play 20 minutes. We got to catch a bus. By mutual agreement by both coaches, they can cut the second half down. So that's up to them.
Are JV and freshman games 40 also?
They are. Yep. Now, if you are fortunate enough to work a varsity game where the JV is to follow, I forget what that is. I want to say they're 20 minutes, maybe 30. I forget. But I'd have to go look that up. But they'll talk about that in our preseason meetings that we have. So if you get a game, they'll tell you what that length is, and you go back to back, you get it started right away, and off you go. And you work a double header. It's a good payday. You got to be in good shape for that, right? Because you got to run 2, it's like 2.5 games pretty much. So you hope the varsity game doesn't go overtime. I've had that varsity game overtime and then do a JV game. I was pretty tired. Timekeeping. So unlike USSF and other things, right? The timer is actually can be kept officially off the field. So if they have if they have a clock and a scoreboard or whatever, some visible timer, and someone that's going to be do it like a clock operator, that's the official timer. Then you are the backup time on your watch. You can correct the time if they make a mistake, like let it run when it should have stopped, but they are the official time. Okay. So a lot of schools do have stadium clocks now. You'd be surprised, even for JV games. So, but if there's no clock, or if the clock is not operating properly, they don't have someone to run it, you can use it for just the score. And then you keep the time on your watch. And guess what? Both officials keep time. Both officials keep time. So, and usually we say the table side is the official clock. Like if there's no stadium clock, the person that's closest to the table is the official clock. So, okay. And it's an official game if one half is played. That just means, that doesn't mean anything for you. That just means for the schools. So they won't replay it. If you get past halftime, you're good to go. This is different, right? The clock stops on a goal, unlike USSF, where that thing's rolling and you do this extra time thing. We don't have extra time in high school. You have right to the end. And in fact, the ball has, if there's a goal being scored, and I had this last year, 2 years ago at Ocean City girls game, overtime, ball's in flight, and the ball goes in the net, and a split second later, the horn goes off. We scored the goal. I was so nervous because I wasn't sure 100%. You hear sounds, this and that, but on video, it looked good. And the goal has to be scored before the clock, not like USSF where you let the play kind of finish out. Not here. That at 0, it's over. But the clock stops for goals, penalty kicks, or cautions and DQs, send-offs, or anytime you want to stop it. So at the discretion of the referee, if a team's wasting time, you want to stop the clock, stop the clock. Say, hey, that's enough, right? I stopped the clock. I'm giving you a verbal warning here. I'm not going to give you a caution card, but I'm going to tell you, like, stop, messing around. Okay. You're wasting time. And this is unique to high school. The clock always stops when we have a substitution by the team that's in the lead in the second half in the last 5 minutes of the game. That's to stop time wasting. So, and you got to be cognizant of that. We said the official timekeeper is on the table side, and our stop clock signal is the crossed hands over our head. So whenever there's a goal, part of our signal is we stop the clock and then we point to the center. And again, we'll get into that when we talk about mechanics, but it's important to know the difference that our clock stops all the time in high school.
Question, one of your other slides, it looked like you referenced that the clock stopped on goal kicks, and that was that confused me.
No, the clock is, it's not stopped on a goal kick, but I think that was on the slide for substitutions. Any team can substitute on a goal kick, but the clock is running.
You had parenthetically above that for that section when the clock stops. So that was a big.
Yeah, good catch. Yep, that should be called out. So good catch. The clock does not stop on a goal kick. Only on these situations you see right here. A goal, penalty kick, injury. That should be on here. Is injury on? Yeah, injury, possible injury. Right. Once you stop the clock for an injury, the player must be substituted for. Player must be substituted for if you stop the clock. Okay. That's why you could, if you see a possible injury, you can let the clock run a little bit and say, are you okay? Are you okay? And then if they're not, stop the clock and then deal with it. Wait, beckon the trainer on or what, a coach. Okay. Starting of play. This is important. For those of you to other sports in the state, you know this, but we'll go over this when we get into our actual pregame mechanics. There's a sportsmanship statement that we read every player, every game. It's mandated by law that we read it word for word. It's a card that you'll have printed, you'll have with you, and we bring them out to the center restraining circle, and both teams and both head coaches come out. And the first question I ask is, Coach, can you certify that your players will practice good sportsmanship today and are properly dressed according to National Federation High School rules? And each coach must verbally say yes, yes. So they say yes to you. So they've certified that they're going to do good sportsmanship and they're properly dressed. Okay. And then you read that statement to them, or you could do the other way around. Doesn't matter, but you're going to read the statement. Hey, you'll just read it. I'm not going to read it now, but it takes about 30 seconds to read. This is your only warning for unsportsmanlike conduct, includes taunting and baiting around race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, blah, 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 blah. It goes on a few more sentences, right? So it's all about sportsmanship. Then you let the teams go and you say, captains, would like you to come out for the coin toss. Keep the captains, coaches, and players go away. Keep the captains there and let the visiting team typically call the coin toss, and they get choice of goal or kickoff. That's your choice. And then the second half, when we switch ends, the other team kicks off, right? So they can choose goal or kickoff. That's their only choice. And we do that same procedure for this first sudden victory overtime period. So if we're going to do it again, and what happens is in varsity game, varsity only, game's over, we're tied. Before they leave the field, we just say, captains, come here. And you do that coin toss quickly and let them pick kickoff or goal that they'll defend. So we do that right away. And that's it for that. And that's how we get play going. Kickoff, pretty standard. Ball can be kicked in a direction. Kicker may stand in the opponent's half. That was a rule change a couple of years ago. I think it's consistent with FIFA, USSSF. You can score a goal from a kickoff, but not in your own goal. That would be actually a goal kick or a corner kick. Drop ball, the rule has been changed a little bit where, we don't do contested drop balls anymore. I don't know if you guys can tell me if they do that in USSF, but we don't do it in high school. So can't score from a drop ball. But typically a drop ball is if there's a stoppage in play that the team that had possession is going to get it back again, right? So, and if it's in the penalty area, we drop it to the goalkeeper and everybody's got to be out of the penalty. All the opposing players have to be out of the penalty area, right? Everybody's going to be 4 yards away from the ball. We give it to one person. If it's the goalkeeper, they can pick it up. We drop it to them, they can pick it up. So that's a drop ball. And that's just another way to restart when we're unsure how to do that. Again, we're going to get into this a little bit more and we talk deeper into the rules, but kind of high level stuff here. And that's actually the last piece I had for tonight. So we covered a lot, right?
Quick question about the penalty area drop ball. So anything, if the ball hits the referee, opposing team, attacking team, passing, shooting. Well, shooting's a little different, I thought. But any pass or a random ball hits the referee, it just goes to the goalkeeper. Drop ball to the goalkeeper.
That's right. Yep.
Okay.
That's right. Again, we'll get into that. We get to that rule where this is just I'm keeping it high level at first here. When we get into the test, those questions come up. So we'll be able to dive into that a little bit more. Okay. So things I'm going to send you all tonight are, as follow up to this, I'm going to send you the pregame card checklist that you can use. Suggest you print this out and we can review. We're going to actually do a pregame. One of our sessions will actually have a pregame, go through it. I'll send you this uniform guide, which has all that stuff. What else? What else was I going to send you? I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. I was going to send you the test tonight, but it's not out. I thought we were going to have it tonight, but we actually don't have it yet. So if I get the test, remember, it's an open book test. I will push that out to everybody, and then we can actually, start working on that. And my suggestion is, if it's okay with you guys, I'll take the test and ask everyone to do like 6 or 7 questions on your own. It's open book. We'll get back together and review the answers, see which ones you got stuck on. A lot of them are easy. There might be 1 or 2 that might be a little bit harder to find. And then we'll just go through the test top to bottom, see what we all agree on are the answers, and we'll all submit the same and most likely get the same grade unless you have you have a strong desire to change one of the answers. That would be fine. And that's perfectly acceptable to do it that way.
When are the books available? I mean, are we supposed to have books?
Yeah. So here's the deal. The books are coming this week. What I'd like you to do, I'm going to put in the chat window. Charlie, Joe, but I'm going to put an address. I'll email everyone the address. Joe Rossi, our secretary, is also the secretary of softball, baseball. He will mail you a copy of the rule book. They're coming in. He might even have them today. So I'll shoot you that email and copy Joe, and you just give him your mailing address and he'll stick one of those in an envelope. You should have it in a day or 2. And again, you can get the rule books online. And once you're fully registered, I haven't looked at my app yet. I can do that now to see if, let me see if the new rule books came in here. Let's see. 2020-23 basketball, football, soccer. 22-23 says renew. Yeah, it's still asking me to pay for the soccer one, but they haven't updated this yet. Eventually, you'll all have this on your phone too, so you'll have another copy of it. But you'll get a printed copy too.
We'll have to pay for the online version?
No, it's included. Yeah, it's included.
So it'll just show up with no cost.
Yeah. Yep. You can download that app. Exactly. So, so next week I'm going to walk through like penalties and some other stuff and get the test started. And then we'll do a session on mechanics. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I think we're pretty much there. I know some of you are new and we can spend more time and as we go through this, but if you look at all the information that I have, you will see there's a lot of stuff, great stuff to read, and take a look at all the documents and the videos and everything. Okay. Questions so far? Anything? Not too bad, right? Any surprises for you USSF folks? Did you know that things were like that, or was that like kind of new to you? Mike and
I was
Jim?
giving a little bit of an overview on the time stoppage and the subs.
Yeah, a little
Pretty
bit
much,
different. Yep.
Yeah, that's definitely different.
Yep. So, and it is. So our signal, and we'll go over signals later, but we always stop the clock. Whenever we have the situation, we stop the clock, we show the stop the clock signal. We look at the timer to make sure they've stopped the clock, because that's one of the most important things. We make sure that thing's not running while we're thinking it's stopped. You've stopped it on your wrist and that thing's running. Okay, that's all I have. We went a few minutes over tonight, but all good. And I'll hang on if anyone has any questions after, okay?
All right, thanks.
Thanks a lot, Billy.